I hid $47,000 in debt from my wife the day everything came crashing down and almost destroyed our family. The confession. The words hung in the air between them like poison gas, spreading slowly, contaminating everything they thought they knew about each other. $47,000. Michael watched his wife's face transform, not all at once, but in stages. First, confusion. Her eyebrows drew together, that small wrinkle appearing between them that he'd always found endearing. Then comprehension as the number registered, as the math started happening in her head. And finally, something worse than anger. Something that made his stomach drop like an elevator with cut cables. Betrayal. Jennifer stood in their kitchen in Naperville, Illinois, still holding the stack of mail she'd intercepted that morning. Collection notices, final warnings, demands for payment on credit cards Michael swore he'd cancelled years ago. The ceramic mug in her other hand trembled, coffee threatening to spill over the rim. "Say something," Michael whispered. "Please, Jen, say something." But she couldn't. Because what do you say when the person you've built a life with, the father of your 2 children sleeping upstairs, the man you've trusted for 13 years, has been living a completely different reality than the one you thought you shared? This is a story about the lies we tell ourselves becoming the lies we tell the people we love most. It's about the suffocating weight of secrets and the brutal honesty required to rebuild from ruins. And it's about a financial system that preys on our weaknesses while we're too ashamed to ask for help. But most importantly, it's about what happens the day after everything falls apart. The double life. 6 months earlier, Michael had been a different kind of liar, the casual kind, the kind who could look his wife in the eye over dinner and discuss their vacation fund while knowing that fund had been drained 3 months prior to cover minimum payments on cards she didn't know existed. It started small. It always does. In 2019, Michael's position as a mid-level manager at a manufacturing firm seemed secure. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable. Jennifer worked part-time as a dental hygienist, and together they brought in about $92,000 a year, enough for their modest 3-bedroom home, enough for their kids' activities, enough to feel like they were doing okay in the vast middle class of suburban America. Then Michael's father got sick. Cancer doesn't ask if you have good insurance. It doesn't care that your father lives in Ohio, and every trip to help him means gas money, hotel rooms, meals out because you're too exhausted to cook. It doesn't account for the medical bills that insurance doesn't cover, or the experimental treatment Michael insisted on paying for, because how do you put a price on your father's life? $8,000 went on the Visa, then another $6 on the MasterCard. Then Michael opened a new card with a promotional rate to transfer the balances, telling himself it was smart financial management. He'd pay it off when things settled down. When his dad got better, his dad didn't get better. When Thomas Bennett died in January 2020, he left behind a grieving son and a financial crater that Michael couldn't see the bottom of. The funeral costs, the final expenses. The guilt purchases, like the expensive headstone that seemed like the least he could do for a man who'd worked his whole life at the steel mill. "We should dip into savings for this," Jennifer had said softly, holding his hand at the funeral home as they discussed costs. "No," Michael had said, "I've got it covered." He did have it covered, with credit card number 4. Then the pandemic hit, and the world Michael thought he understood stopped making sense entirely. His hours were cut. Jennifer's dental office closed for 3 months. The stimulus checks helped, but not enough. The forbearance programs kept the mortgage from drowning them, but the credit cards, those kept ticking like time bombs. Every month, Michael would intercept the mail. Every statement became another piece of evidence to hide. He created a separate email account for the notifications. He paid the minimums by transferring money from their joint account in small enough amounts that Jennifer wouldn't question them. $60 here for gas, $100 there for work lunches, $85 for the kids' school supplies. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, except the paper cuts were dollars and the death was their financial future. By the time his hours were fully restored in 2021, the damage was catastrophic. The interest rates had kicked in after the promotional periods ended. 24%, 28%. One card climbed to 29.9% after he missed a payment while juggling the others. The minimums alone were eating $700 a month. And Jennifer had no idea. She thought they were saving for a new car. She thought they were building their emergency fund back up. She thought her husband was the man she married, not this hollow imposter who couldn't sleep more than 4 hours a night, who jumped every time the phone rang, who'd developed a nervous habit of checking his email compulsively every 15 minutes. The shame was its own kind of weight, physical, crushing. Michael would lie in bed next to his wife, listening to her breathe and feel like he was drowning in shallow water. Like he could stand up at any moment and save himself, but something kept him pinned down. Pride, maybe, or fear, or the terrible mathematical certainty that there was no way out that didn't involve admitting what he'd done. "I saw we had less in savings than I thought," Jennifer mentioned one evening in March, scrolling through their bank app while they watched TV. "Did you move some to checking?" Michael's heart performed acrobatics in his chest. "Yeah," he said, not looking at her. "Property tax bill came early." She nodded, believing him, and that was somehow worse than if she'd questioned it. Her trust was a mirror showing him exactly what he'd become. The day of reckoning. It was a Tuesday morning in late September when the foundation cracked completely. Jennifer had stayed home sick from work, some kind of stomach bug that had her planted on the couch with ginger ale and crackers. Michael had already left for the office when the mail came early. She heard it hit the doormat with that distinctive thud and, bored and restless, decided to sort through it. Most of it was junk. Grocery store circulars, campaign advertisements for the upcoming midterms, a credit card offer addressed to current resident, then a letter addressed to Michael from a law firm. Jennifer wasn't the type to open her husband's mail. In 13 years of marriage, she'd respected that boundary religiously. But something about the return address made her stomach clench. Not the stomach bug, something worse, some instinct that bypasses rational thought and goes straight to survival mode. She opened it. Notice of intent to sue for outstanding debt. Account ending in 7842. Amount due 12,47789. The paper shook in her hands as she read it again, then again. The words weren't changing. Michael had a credit card she didn't know about, with a balance that would take them nearly 4 months of savings to pay off, savings that she'd thought they actually had. She opened the laptop. It took her 40 minutes to find the hidden email account. She knew Michael better than he realized, knew his patterns, his favorite numbers, the variations he used for passwords. When she finally cracked it, what she found wasn't just one legal notice. There were dozens of emails, payment reminders, statement notifications, desperate messages from creditors with subject lines like "final notice" and "immediate action required." She clicked through them with mounting horror, keeping a tally on a notepad next to her. Card 1, 12,477. Card 2, 9,834. Card 3, 11,256. Card 4, 8,923. Card 5, 4,687. $47,177. Jennifer sat in their kitchen, in the home they'd scrimped to afford, surrounded by the life they'd built together, and felt reality crack like ice under her feet. Every decision they'd made in the past 2 years had been based on false information. Every conversation about money had been a performance. Every "we're doing okay" had been a lie. She called Michael at work. "Hey, babe," he answered, his voice carrying that forced cheerfulness she now recognized as the sound of a man hiding something. "Feeling better?" "Come home," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat, dead. "What's wrong? Are you okay? Is it the kids?" "The kids are fine. Come home now, Michael. We need to talk." The 40-minute drive from his office in Oak Brook to their house in Naperville was the longest of Michael's life. He knew. The moment she'd said, "We need to talk," in that tone, he knew. The secret he'd been carrying like a boulder on his back was about to crush him, and somewhere in the terror was an awful sense of relief. When he walked through the door, Jennifer was sitting at the kitchen table. The printouts were spread in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. She'd printed every statement, every notice, every email. The paper trail of his deception laid out in neat, damning rows. $47,000, she said without preamble. "Sit down and explain to me how we owe $47,000 that I didn't know about." So he did. He sat down, and in a voice that kept breaking, he told her everything. About his father and the medical bills and the guilt, about the pandemic and the hours cut and the desperate juggling act, about the minimums and the interest and the way it all spiraled faster than he could control. About the shame that kept him silent even as the hole got deeper. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jennifer's voice cracked on the last word. "Michael, why didn't you tell me when it started? We could have figured it out together." "I don't know," he whispered. "I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just worked harder, picked up some overtime, made some bigger payments. We're partners." The anger finally broke through. "We're supposed to be partners, Michael. You don't get to make decisions that affect our entire family without me. You don't get to lie to me for 2 years and call it protection." "I know. Do you? Because right now I don't know if I can trust anything you say. I don't know what else you've been hiding. I don't know who I'm married to." That was the moment. That was when Michael felt the full weight of what he'd done crash down, not just on his shoulders, but on hers, on their children's, on the entire structure of their life together. The debt was suffocating, but it was the broken trust that was terminal. Jennifer stood up, gathered the papers into a stack, and looked at her husband with eyes that held something he'd never seen there before. Not quite hatred. Something colder. Distance. "I'm taking the kids to my sister's for a few days," she said. "You're going to figure out exactly how bad this is. Every card, every loan, every dollar we owe. And then we're going to decide if this marriage is worth saving." She left. Michael sat in their empty kitchen, listening to her pack upstairs, listening to his kids ask confused questions about why they were going to Aunt Sarah's on a school night, listening to the car pull out of the driveway. Then he buried his face in his hands and sobbed like a man who'd finally hit bottom and discovered it was further down than he'd imagined possible. The inventory of destruction. For 3 days, Michael lived alone in their house and faced the monster he'd created. He made spreadsheets. He called credit card companies and asked for the final total numbers. He logged into every account, checked every statement, tracked every dollar of interest that had accumulated. The full picture was worse than even he'd realized. Total debt, $47,177. Average interest rate, 26.3%. Minimum monthly payments, $743. If he paid only minimums, it would take 37 years to pay off and cost an additional $96,421 in interest. He also tracked their assets. The house worth about $285,000 with $197,000 left on the mortgage. 2 cars, combined value maybe $18,000, both paid off. Retirement accounts, Jennifer had about $34,000 in her 401k. He had $41,000 in his. Savings, $2,847. Checking, $1,223. On paper, they weren't destitute, they had equity, they had retirement funds. But touching those felt like admitting complete defeat. and the debt was a python slowly constricting around their future. Michael slept maybe 4 hours total across those 3 days. He researched debt consolidation loans and found that with his now damaged credit score, he'd barely save anything on interest. He looked into balance transfer cards and discovered he no longer qualified. He read bankruptcy forums at 3 in the morning and felt sick at the thought of that mark on their record for 7 to 10 years. On the 4th day, Jennifer came home, alone. The kids were staying with her sister for the weekend. "Show me," she said. They sat at the kitchen table, and Michael walked her through the spreadsheet he'd created. Every number, every mistake, every month of interest that had compounded while he'd hidden the truth. She asked questions in a voice that was still cold, but no longer shocked. She'd had 3 days to process, and now she was in problem-solving mode. "We have some options," Michael said carefully. "We could take a loan against my 401k. We could get a home equity line of credit. We could get divorced." Jennifer interrupted. "That's an option too." The words landed like a physical blow. Michael looked at his wife and saw that she meant it. This wasn't a threat. It was a legitimate option she was considering. "Is that what you want?" he asked. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. "I don't know what I want, Michael. I'm so angry at you. I'm angry that you made me look stupid. I'm angry that we've wasted 2 years. We could have been fixing this together. I'm angry that you thought so little of me that you couldn't trust me with the truth. I didn't think little of you. I thought little of myself. Well, your low self-esteem just cost us $47,000 and almost our marriage. So maybe you should have talked to someone about that too." She wasn't wrong. Michael had been so busy managing his shame that he'd never addressed the underlying issues. The fear of failure that came from growing up poor. The need to be the provider that his father had modeled, sometimes to the family's detriment. The toxic masculinity that said asking for help was weakness. "I want to fix this," Michael said. "Not just the debt. Us. I want to fix us." "I don't know if you can." "Let me try. Please, Jen, let me try." Jennifer looked at the spreadsheet, at the numbers that represented years of payments and sacrifice ahead of them. Then she looked at her husband, really looked at him, and saw not the man who'd betrayed her, but the man who'd held her hand through 3 miscarriages before their son was born. The man who'd learned to braid their daughter's hair. The man who'd cried at their wedding because he couldn't believe someone loved him enough to marry him. "Okay," she said finally. "We try, but there are conditions." The brutal plan. Jennifer's conditions were non-negotiable. 1. Complete financial transparency. Every account, every card, every dollar earned or spent would be visible to both of them. She set up a shared budgeting app that night and made Michael link every financial account they had. 2. Couples therapy. Not negotiable, not optional. They would see someone weekly to address the trust issues, the communication breakdown, and the individual counseling Michael clearly needed. 3. No major financial decisions without mutual agreement. Not even, "I'm buying us dinner," without checking in first. 4. They would attack this debt together, but Michael would take on extra work to pay for the therapy and create a separate debt-crushing fund. This was his mess, and while she'd helped clean it up, he needed to feel the weight of fixing it. Michael agreed to everything. He would have agreed to anything. That weekend, they sat down with the financial counselor Jennifer had found through her dental office. His name was Robert Chen, a certified financial planner who specialized in debt crisis management. He listened to their story without judgment, reviewed their numbers with a practiced eye, and then laid out a plan that was as brutal as it was simple. "You have 2 realistic paths," Robert said. "Path 1, you consolidate this debt through a home equity line of credit. You'll get a lower interest rate, maybe 8 to 10% instead of 26. You'll save money on interest, but you're converting unsecured debt into secured debt. If something goes wrong and you can't pay, you lose your house. Michael and Jennifer exchanged glances. That felt too risky. Path 2, Robert continued, is what I call the nuclear option. You aggressively attack this debt while living on almost nothing. I'm talking rice and beans. No restaurants, no vacations, no extras. You take every available dollar and throw it at the highest interest rate card first, while making minimums on the others. It's called the avalanche method, and mathematically, it's the most efficient way to kill this debt. How long would that take? Jennifer asked. Robert looked at his calculator. If you can throw an extra $1,000 a month at this on top of the minimums, you'd be debt-free in about 31 months, 2.5 years. If you can find $1,500 extra per month, you'd cut it to 23 months. Where are we supposed to find $1,500 extra a month? Michael asked, though he already knew the answer. That's the brutal part, Robert said. You find it by living like you make $30,000 less than you do. You cut everything that isn't essential. And one or both of you probably needs to increase income. They left Robert's office with a plan that felt like someone had handed them a map to climb Everest. Possible, technically, but requiring a level of sacrifice and determination that seemed almost superhuman. That night, they made the budget that would define the next 2 years of their lives. The sacrifice. The next morning, Michael posted his car on Facebook Marketplace. It was a 2018 Honda Accord he'd been proud of, bought used, but still nice. Within 2 days, he sold it for $14,200. After paying off the $4,500 loan against it, they put $9,700 directly onto the highest interest card. The debt total dropped to $37,170. Small victory, massive sacrifice. Michael would take the bus to work. Jennifer cut her own hair using YouTube tutorials, cancelled their streaming services except one that the kids shared, started buying groceries at Aldi instead of Jewel Osco. Learned that dried beans were 1/5 the cost of canned, that chicken thighs were cheaper than breasts, that store-brand cereal tasted exactly the same as name brand. They told their kids, aged 8 and 11, a carefully edited version of the truth. Dad made some mistakes with money, and we're going to be really careful for a while so we can fix it. That means fewer treats and different kinds of fun, but we're going to be okay. Their daughter asked if they were poor now. Jennifer hugged her and said, "No, baby, we're just being smarter." Michael picked up a second job delivering groceries for Instacart on weekends. 20 hours a week at an average of $18 an hour after gas and mileage. Another $1,400 a month minus taxes. All of it went to the debt. Jennifer increased her hours at the dental office from 3 days a week to 4, adding about $800 a month to their income. The extra money went straight to debt payments. They stopped going to restaurants entirely. Michael brought lunch to work in plastic containers. Jennifer meal prepped on Sundays. The kids complained about eating leftovers, but they adapted. Christmas that year was brutal. They'd always been generous with presents, wanting their kids to have what they'd never had. This year, each child got 3 gifts, something they wanted, something they needed, and something to read. Jennifer cried wrapping them, thinking about the gaming console her son had asked for, the tablet her daughter had circled in every ad. But there was something else happening too, something unexpected. Fighting together is different than fighting against each other. Every small win became a shared victory. The first card paid off after 6 months felt like summiting a mountain. Michael and Jennifer opened the statement showing a 0 balance and hugged in their kitchen with a ferocity that surprised them both. The therapy helped. Dr. Morrison, their counselor, helped them understand that Michael's hiding wasn't about Jennifer at all. It was about shame so deep he couldn't articulate it, about masculine expectations he'd absorbed from a father who'd worked himself to death rather than admit he was struggling. Jennifer learned that her anger, while justified, was masking deeper fears about her own financial illiteracy. She'd been content to let Michael handle the money because she'd absorbed her own gender expectations about who manages what in a marriage. They started having money meetings every Sunday evening, sitting together with coffee, reviewing the budget, celebrating wins, strategizing about upcoming expenses. Money became something they discussed constantly, demystified, stripped of its power to shame them. Michael told Jennifer about the insomnia, the panic attacks, the suicidal thoughts he'd had at his lowest point. She held him while he cried and told him that his life was worth more than money, that she needed him alive more than she needed a paid-off visa. They learned to argue productively. To say, "I feel scared," instead of "you're irresponsible." To acknowledge setbacks without catastrophizing. When the car needed a major repair that set them back a month in payments, they absorbed it together instead of pointing fingers. Slowly, impossibly, the numbers changed. 37,277 became $29,000 became $21,000. Each milestone felt like breaking through a wall. They created a visual tracker on their refrigerator, a large thermometer they colored in as the debt decreased. Their kids started cheering when they got to color in another segment. The hardest part wasn't the budgeting, it was watching their friends continue living normal lives while they said no to everything. No to dinner out, no to the weekend trip, no to their daughter's request to do travel soccer because the tournament fees were too high. The isolation of being broke while everyone around you appears comfortable is its own special kind of pain. But there were unexpected gifts too. Family game nights became their entertainment. They got library cards and discovered their library had free passes to museums. They hiked and biked and found free concerts in the park. Their kids adapted better than they'd feared. Once they understood why things were different, they became part of the team. Their son started asking, "Is this a want or a need?" before requesting things. Their daughter donated half her stuffed animals to Goodwill because someone else should have fun if we can't buy new ones. 23 months after that terrible day in the kitchen, Michael made the final payment. 000 balance on the last card. They'd done it. $47,000 paid off while still keeping their house, their cars, their marriage. They didn't tell anyone right away. They just sat together that evening after the kids went to bed, holding hands on their couch, letting the reality sink in. "We did it," Jennifer whispered. "We did it," Michael confirmed. And then Jennifer said something that surprised them both. "I don't want to go back." "What do you mean?" "I don't want to go back to how we were living before. I know we don't have debt hanging over us anymore, but I like this. I like us actually talking about money. I like the kids understanding that things cost something. I like that we're a team now, instead of you being the manager and me being clueless." Michael pulled her closer. "I don't want to go back either, but maybe we could eat at a restaurant occasionally." She laughed. "Yeah, we can eat at a restaurant occasionally." The after, 3 years have passed since Jennifer found those letters. The debt is gone, replaced by something they'd never had before, an emergency fund with 8 months of expenses, retirement accounts that they're both actively contributing to and understand, a vacation fund that's actually a vacation fund. But the real changes are harder to quantify. Michael still goes to therapy, now monthly instead of weekly. He's learned to recognize the thought patterns that led him to hide his problems instead of solving them. He's learned that his worth isn't tied to his ability to provide alone, that partnership means sharing both the victories and the failures. Jennifer has become, in her words, a money nerd. She listens to personal finance podcasts during her commute. She's the one who suggested they start investing in index funds. She teaches a financial literacy class for young women at their church because she never wants anyone to be as clueless as she once was. Their marriage is different. Stronger in some ways, scarred in others. Jennifer still has moments when the old anger flares up, when something reminds her of the betrayal. Michael still has to fight the instinct to hide problems instead of sharing them. But they've built communication channels that didn't exist before. They've learned that the hard conversations are the ones you have to have first, not last. Their kids are different too. They've seen their parents struggle and survive. They've learned that financial problems don't mean you're stupid or worthless, just that you made mistakes and have to fix them. They've learned that talking about money openly isn't taboo, it's necessary. Would Michael take it all back if he could? Would he rewind to that day in 2019 and make different choices? Yes and no, he said when I asked him. Obviously, I wish I'd never hidden it. I wish I'd been brave enough to tell Jennifer the truth from the beginning. But the person I am now, the marriage we have now, the family we've become, that came from walking through the fire. I'm not grateful for the debt. I'm grateful for what it forced us to build. Jennifer nodded. I wish it hadn't happened. But I also know we're better equipped for life now than we ever were before. We know we can survive hard things together. That's worth something. The blueprint for others. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in Michael's story, if you're hiding debt from your partner or drowning alone in financial problems you can't admit, hear this. The day you confess will be one of the worst days of your life. The weeks after will be brutal. The conversation will be excruciating, but the alternative is worse. The alternative is living in a prison of your own construction until it collapses on top of you. The alternative is destroying your relationships piece by piece while telling yourself you're protecting them. Here's what worked for Michael and Jennifer, distilled into steps. First, complete transparency. No half-truths, no minimizing. Get every statement, every bill, every piece of debt on the table. The whole truth is less scary than the imagined truth, always. Second, get professional help. A financial counselor, a therapist, both if possible. You can't solve problems created by poor thinking with the same thinking that created them. Third, make a plan that's aggressive but sustainable. Going too hard too fast leads to burnout and relapse. But being too gentle means you'll be in debt forever. Find the balance point where you're uncomfortable but not broken. Fourth, increase income or decrease expenses, preferably both. There's only so much you can cut from a budget. At some point, you have to earn more. Fifth, make it visible. Track everything. Share it with your partner. Put it on the refrigerator if that helps. What you measure improves. Sixth, find free or cheap rewards along the way. Celebrate milestones. Mark progress. Don't live like a monk for years without acknowledging how far you've come. Seventh, communicate constantly. Have money meetings. Talk about fears and frustrations. Don't let resentment build in silence. Eighth, remember why you're doing this. It's not about the debt. It's about the life you want to build on the other side. Michael and Jennifer's story isn't unique. Thousands of couples are living this right now, hiding financial problems, suffering in silence, convinced they're the only ones who failed this badly. But the American debt crisis isn't about individual moral failure. It's about a system designed to profit from our weaknesses. From medical crises we didn't choose, from employment instability we can't control, from the shame that keeps us isolated instead of asking for help. The average American household carries over $16,000 in credit card debt. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy. The system is rigged against us in many ways, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. Michael and Jennifer proved that facing the truth, as painful as it is the first step toward freedom. That the conversation you're most afraid to have is probably the one that will save your life. That the person you're hiding from might be the only one who can help you find your way out. The debt nearly destroyed them. The honesty saved them. If you're drowning right now, know this. The shame you feel is real, but it's not the truth. The truth is that you're human. You made mistakes, and mistakes can be fixed. The truth is that the conversation you're terrified to have might be the beginning of your way out. The truth is that you don't have to do this alone. Pick up the phone. Show them the statements. Say the number out loud. Let the poison out so the healing can begin. Your family is worth more than your pride. Your marriage is worth more than your shame. You are worth more than the sum of your debts. The first step is always the hardest, but it's also the only one that leads to freedom. Take it.